For decades, the Titans had been the Dominion's ultimate weapon, 10-foot-tall warriors of metal and flesh, their bodies reinforced with cybernetic armor, their minds sharpened into killing instruments. They had fought where no one else could, turned the tide of wars, and crushed the Dominion's enemies beneath their boots. And in return, they had been promised loyalty, honor, and a place in history. All of it was a lie. Commander Darius Voss stood on the blood-soaked soil of Archon V, a once thriving colony world reduced to a wasteland. The Xilari swarm had pushed them to their limits. Wave after wave of chitinous horrors had crashed against their defenses, forcing the Titans to fight for every inch of ground. Yet they had held. They had always held, because no matter how many times the Dominion asked them to stand against impossible odds, the Titans had obeyed. And now, the Dominion had abandoned them. Voss clenched his fist as he watched the last human warships vanish into the sky. The Dominion fleet had pulled out, leaving nothing but silence in their wake. The comm channels had gone dark. No orders, no reinforcements, no extraction. Just a single, chilling broadcast from high command before the frequencies cut off entirely. This war is over. You are to stand down and surrender. Do not resist. Voss spat on the ground. Surrender. The Xilari did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. The moment the Dominion left, the swarm would descend like vultures, eager to rip apart the remaining Titans and erase them from existence. A voice crackled in his helmet. "Commander, what the hell is happening? The fleet's gone." Voss turned to see Lieutenant Aiden Graves, his second in command, stepping over the broken bodies of Xilari drones. His armor was dented, his visor cracked, but his stance was steady. Behind him, the last remnants of the Titan battalion gathered, their massive frames outlined against the burning sky. 50 warriors. That was all that remained of the 2,000 Titans deployed to this front. "They left us," Voss said, his voice like steel. "High command cut us loose." Graves cursed. "They wouldn't." "They did." Voss cut him off. "And if we don't move now, we're dead." As if summoned by his words, a deep tremor shook the battlefield. The distant horizon darkened as an ocean of Xilari swarmed forward, their massive war beasts crushing the ruins beneath their clawed feet. Their masters had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the humans to retreat so they could claim the prize they had fought so hard for. "They think we're finished," Voss said. He looked over his soldiers, his brothers and sisters in arms, the greatest warriors humanity had ever created. The Dominion had forsaken them. But that didn't mean they were beaten. "No more orders," he said. "No more missions. No more fighting for cowards who see us as disposable. From this moment on, we fight for ourselves. We survive. And we make them regret ever leaving us behind." The Titans raised their weapons. Their war was just beginning. The air stank of burning flesh and ionized metal. The Xilari swarm surged forward, a tide of chitin and claws, their screeches vibrating through the shattered ruins of Archon V. There was no strategy, no formation, just pure, overwhelming numbers. It was how they had crushed countless civilizations before. But the Titans were not like other soldiers. Commander Darius Voss raised his arm, and his HUD marked the incoming horde with bright red indicators. 50 Titans, 10,000 Xilari. The numbers were impossible. Good. Impossible odds were the only kind they knew. "Hold the line," Voss roared. A wall of thunder erupted as the Titans unleashed hell. Heavy Gauss rounds punched through armored exoskeletons. Plasma cannons turned entire clusters of Xilari into molten slag, and railgun slugs tore through the enemy ranks, severing limbs and rupturing carapaces. The swarm staggered, but did not stop. They never stopped. Voss moved like a force of nature, his cybernetic muscles amplifying every movement. He leaped onto the back of a charging Xilari brute, driving his wrist-mounted blades into its skull. The beast screeched, flailing as Voss twisted the blades, severing its neural pathways. It collapsed in a heap, crushing lesser drones beneath its bulk. Left flank is folding. Graves' voice crackled in his earpiece. Voss turned, spotting a gap in their defenses. The Auxiliary had found a weak point and were pouring through, overwhelming 3 Titans trying to hold the breach. One of them, Titan Cade, was already down, his armor ruptured, acidic bile eating through his flesh. Voss sprinted. Auxiliary drone lunged at him, its serrated limbs slashing toward his head. He sidestepped, caught its arm mid-strike, and ripped it clean off. Before the creature could scream, he crushed its skull with a single brutal punch. Graves was already there, dragging Cade's body back, while Titan Ren, a towering brute of a soldier, covered them with a shoulder-mounted autocannon. Voss vaulted over the rubble, landing with a seismic thud. He drove his boot into the ground and activated his shockwave module. Energy surged through his limbs as he swung his fist into the earth. A concussive blast ripped through the battlefield. The auxiliary drones caught in the blast radius were sent flying, their brittle exoskeletons shattering on impact. "Fall back to the canyon pass," Voss ordered. Now. The Titans moved in practiced cohesion, falling into a staggered retreat, firing as they pulled back toward the narrow rock formations that formed the edge of the battlefield. The swarm followed, mindless and relentless. As soon as the last Titan crossed the threshold, Voss triggered the charges. Explosives buried beneath the canyon walls erupted in a cascade of fire and stone. Massive rock formations collapsed, sealing the pass, cutting off the auxiliary advance. For the first time in hours, there was silence. Voss exhaled, his breath fogging against the inside of his helmet. He turned to his surviving warriors, bloodied, battered, but still standing. "The Dominion left us to die," he said, voice hard as iron. "They expected us to be wiped out, forgotten." He stepped forward, his glowing cybernetic eyes scanning each of his soldiers. They were wrong. No more masters. No more chains. The Titans had just begun their war. The stars above Arkan V were cold and indifferent as the Titans vanished into the wastelands. The Dominion had left them to die, and the Auxiliary had tried to grant that wish. Instead, the Titans had turned the battlefield into a graveyard of alien corpses. But survival was not victory. They were stranded, cut off from human space, with nothing but the weapons on their backs and the war-torn land beneath their feet. Supplies were dwindling. Wounds festered. If they didn't find a way to regroup, the next Auxiliary assault would finish what the Dominion had started. Commander Darius Voss led them deep into the ruins of Arkan V's old colonial infrastructure, scanning for anything useful. The world had once been a thriving industrial hub before the war had turned it into a killing field. Now, all that remained were shattered skyscrapers and the skeletal husks of orbital shipyards that loomed overhead like the bones of long-dead giants. "This place was supposed to be evacuated years ago," Graves muttered, stepping over the remains of a long-dead civilian, his body preserved in the vacuum of a collapsed habitat dome. "Guess not everyone made it." Voss said nothing. He had long since stopped counting the bodies. Instead, his eyes locked onto something in the distance, a massive structure partially buried beneath the rubble. A Dominion black site. Unregistered. Unmarked. The kind of place High Command denied existed. "If we're lucky," Voss said, striding forward, "this place still has operational systems." Luck was something Titans didn't believe in. But they did believe in taking what they needed, and right now, they needed everything. Ren and a few others forced open the entrance, the heavy blast doors screeching as they pried them apart with cybernetic strength. Inside, the facility was untouched by time. Backup generators flickered to life, revealing endless corridors of data terminals, prototype weapons, and something even more valuable, an operational communications relay. Graves let out a low whistle. "Looks like the Dominion left us a parting gift." Voss approached the terminal and began scanning its encrypted systems. If this relay was connected to Dominion networks, they could tap into it, monitor military movements, and, more importantly, See just how badly High Command wanted them dead. It didn't take long to find out. Graves read over Voss's shoulder as the decrypted message appeared. Classified Order 477 Omega. Titan Initiative. Officially decommissioned. Surviving units. Terminate on site. Public status. Killed in action. Asset disposal. Authorization granted to local fleet commanders. Graves clenched his fists. So that's it. They didn't just abandon us. They'd wiped us from existence. They're scared, Voss said, ice cold. They know what happens when you create a weapon and then lose control of it. Ren cracked his knuckles. Then maybe it's time we remind them. Voss turned to the others. He saw the same fire burning in their eyes, the same hunger for vengeance. The Dominion had erased them, discarded them like obsolete machines. Fine. If the Titans were already ghosts in the eyes of the Dominion, then ghosts they would be. Unseen, unstoppable. And when they struck, the galaxy would tremble. The first Dominion warship to disappear was the ISS Aegis, a patrol frigate assigned to monitor the outer sectors. It never sent a distress signal. One moment it was there, cruising through the void. Then it was gone. What remained were drifting wreckage and shredded bodies, torn apart with ruthless efficiency. At first, the Dominion dismissed it as an engine malfunction or an unlucky pirate ambush. Then the Vanguard's blade vanished. Then the Sovereign dawned. A pattern emerged. Every ship destroyed belonged to the same sector, the one where the Dominion had abandoned the Titans. High Command went silent, realizing their worst fear. The ghosts they had tried to bury were hunting them. And they weren't just killing soldiers. They were sending a message. Deep in an asteroid belt, the Titans gathered inside a stolen Dominion stealth corvette. The Dominion had left them no resources, no supply chains, but they had weapons, they had technology, and they had the will to fight. With each ambush, they grew stronger, scavenging from the fallen. They had learned from the best, and now they were turning those lessons against their former masters. Commander Darius Voss studied a holomap of Dominion fleet routes, his cybernetic eyes narrowing. Next target is a supply convoy near the Pharos Rift. High-value cargo. Limited escorts. Graves smirked. They think we're just a nuisance. Haven't even reinforced their supply lines. Voss turned to his warriors. Then let's prove them wrong. The convoy moved through the rift, escorted by 3 Dominion corvettes, their hulls gleaming under the light of a dying star. Inside the lead ship, Captain Renard paced the bridge, uneasy. Still no contacts. He asked his sensor officer. Negative. Sir, all clear. Renard frowned. The attacks had been sporadic, unpredictable. The Dominion had spent decades building some of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, and yet entire fleets were being torn apart by something they couldn't see. A chill ran down his spine. Then the lights flickered. The bridge crew barely had time to react before the first explosion ripped through the rear escort. The second corvette never even got the chance to raise shields. A railgun slug the size of a car punched through its hull, igniting its reactor. Multiple contacts. Where the hell did they come from? Then they were inside. Titan drop pods slammed into the hull, burning through reinforced plating. The moment the breach was wide enough, the Titans poured in like vengeful wraiths. Voss led the charge, his plasma blade igniting as he drove it through the chest of the first Dominion soldier in his path. Gunfire erupted in the corridors. Dominion security forces fought back, but it was like trying to stop a hurricane with a paper shield. Titans moved through the ship like death incarnate, their cybernetic limbs crushing bodies, their weapons carving a path of destruction. It was over in minutes. The bridge doors burst open, and Renard turned just in time to see Voss step inside, his armor slick with blood. The Dominion captain reached for his sidearm, but Voss was faster. He grabbed Renard by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You abandoned us," Voss growled. "Now we abandon you." With a single brutal motion, he snapped the captain's neck. The Titans left the ship intact, taking everything of value. They left a single transmission broadcasting across Dominion channels. You thought we were dead. You were wrong. We are Titans, and we are coming. Panic spread across Dominion space. The ghosts of war had returned. The Dominion tried to silence the rumors. Official broadcasts labeled the attacks as pirate activity, rogue factions, or even Celery saboteurs. But soldiers on the front lines knew the truth. The Titans had returned, and they were tearing the Dominion apart from the shadows. The rebellion noticed. For years, insurgents had fought to break free from the Dominion's iron grip. Small groups scattered across the colonies, struggling against an empire too large to topple. But now, they had hope. The Titans weren't just fighting back. They were winning. And that made them a symbol. Voss didn't care about symbols. He cared about results. On the barren moon of Thessos 9, the Titans met the rebellion for the first time. The rebels had sent an emissary, a woman named Celine Rowe, former Dominion intelligence, now leader of the Free Colonies resistance. She stood across from Voss in an abandoned military outpost, her face hidden beneath a tattered cloak. "We've been watching you," she said. "The Dominion is terrified. You've done more damage in 6 months than we have in 6 years." Voss studied her, expression unreadable. "And Celine didn't flinch, and we want an alliance." The other Titans shifted. Graves folded his arms. "We don't fight for causes. You fight against the Dominion." Celine countered. "So do we." She stepped forward, lowering her hood. Her cybernetic eye flickered red, a sign of old Dominion augmentation. "You and I both know what they do to soldiers they don't need anymore. We were all abandoned, but together we can be more than ghosts. We can be the fire that burns the Dominion to the ground." Voss remained silent. The Titans had survived by staying in the shadows, striking where the enemy was weakest. An alliance meant risk, meant exposure. And yet, something in Celine's words resonated. The Dominion had turned them into weapons, used them, discarded them, and they weren't the only ones. "How many people do you have?" he finally asked. "Scattered across the colonies. 100,000, Celine said. "Armed? 5,000. Combat trained? Maybe half that." Ren scoffed. "And you think that's enough to take down an empire?" "No," Celine admitted, "but with Titans leading the charge, it just might be." Silence stretched between them. The Titans had spent so long fighting for survival, never looking beyond the next battle. But Voss wasn't blind. He had seen the fear in Dominion broadcasts, the way entire colonies hesitated to answer High Command's call. The Dominion was rotting from within. All that needed was one final push. Voss turned to his Titans. "We've spent years being the Dominion's nightmare. Maybe it's time we become something more." He looked back at Celine. "We don't fight for the rebellion. We fight with them, on our terms." Celine smiled. "Then let's make history." For the first time since their betrayal, the Titans weren't just surviving. They were preparing for war. The Dominion had underestimated the Titans once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. Across the colonies, the rebellion spread like wildfire, emboldened by the Titans' assaults. Supply lines collapsed. Dominion warships were ambushed in deep space, and entire garrisons defected or surrendered rather than face the ghosts of war. What had started as a whisper was now an inferno. High Command responded with everything they had. Voss stood on the bridge of a stolen Dominion battlecruiser, now repurposed as the Titans' mobile warbase. The ship's scanners pulsed with new data. Dominion fleets mobilizing. Sector lockdowns, entire planets placed under martial law. The Dominion wasn't just trying to contain them. They were preparing for something bigger. "They're scared," Graves muttered, "but they're not retreating." Voss narrowed his eyes. "No, they're planning something." The answer came 2 days later, when an encrypted Dominion transmission was intercepted. The message was short, cold, and final. "Operation Revenant is active. Deploy the Ascendants." Voss felt the air in the room shift. The Titans had been humanity's ultimate soldiers, until the Dominion had deemed them obsolete. If High Command had built something to replace them, it meant only one thing. The next battle wouldn't just be a fight. It would be a reckoning. The storm came without warning. A rebel stronghold on a colony of Eldra Prime, one of the few planets that had openly declared independence, went silent in under an hour. No distress calls, no warning signs, just dead air. By the time the Titans arrived, there was nothing left. The city was a graveyard. Bodies littered the streets, entire buildings torn apart with surgical precision. Not a single shot had been fired from the defender side. This wasn't a siege, Ren muttered, scanning the ruins. This was a slaughter. Then the motion trackers blared. The first one struck without sound, moving faster than any normal human should. 1 second, a Titan was scanning a data terminal. The next, his head was gone, his body collapsing in a heap. Voss spun, his cybernetic reflexes barely catching the blur of motion that streaked through the rubble. He fired, but his target was already gone. Then they came in force. 10-foot-tall warriors, clad in sleek black armor, their movements impossibly fast, their strength monstrous. Their faces were hidden behind featureless helmets, but Voss didn't need to see their eyes to know what they were. Ascendants. The Dominion's new answer to the Titans. Graves barely got a shot off before an Ascendant was on him, slamming him through a concrete wall. Ren roared as he fired his heavy repeater, but his rounds barely slowed the charging figure before it smashed into him with bone-shattering force. Voss met one head-on. Their blades clashed, sparks flying. The Ascendant fought without hesitation, no wasted motion. Faster, stronger, deadlier. But something was missing. Voss dodged a strike, his instincts kicking in. These things were fast, but they weren't thinking. They were programmed. A cold smile formed beneath his helmet. "You're not warriors," he muttered. "You're machines, and machines could be broken." The Titans had fought against impossible odds before. The Ascendants were their greatest challenge yet, but no matter how advanced they weren't Titans. And before this war was over, they would learn the difference. The Ascendants were fast, precise, unrelenting. The perfect soldiers, on paper, but the Dominion had made one fatal mistake. They had designed them to win. The Titans had been forged to survive. Voss sidestepped an Ascendant's lunge, driving his fist into its side. The impact cracked reinforced plating, but the enemy didn't flinch. No hesitation, no pain. It twisted unnaturally, bringing its blade around in a counterstrike. Voss ducked, grabbing its wrist mid-swing. With a grunt of effort, he twisted, using the enemy's own speed against it. The snap of breaking metal filled the air as the Ascendant's limb tore free. Sparks burst from the exposed cybernetics. Still, it didn't scream. It didn't react. It just kept coming. Voss slammed his boot into its chest, sending it crashing through a pile of rubble. His comm crackled. "Commander, we need to move," Graves barked. "They keep coming. Doesn't matter how many we put down." Voss scanned the battlefield. He could see it now, the flaw. The Ascendants were faster, stronger, more advanced. But they weren't human. They had no instincts, no adaptability. They fought like a machine algorithm, perfect, predictable, and predictability was weakness. "Change tactics," Voss ordered. "They think we'll fight like soldiers, so we don't. Hit them like monsters. No formations, no patterns, tear them apart." The Titans responded with a brutal shift. Instead of disciplined strategy, they fought like unleashed predators, hunting in pairs, feinting, misdirecting. Where Ascendants moved with mechanical precision, the Titans were wild, ruthless, unpredictable. A cybernetic behemoth lunged at Ren, but instead of dodging, Ren caught its blade mid-swing, wrenched it free, and used it to carve through the enemy's torso. Graves tackled an Ascendant through a broken wall. slamming his helmet into its visor before ripping out its exposed neural core with his bare hands. Voss crushed the skull of the last one beneath his boot. And then silence. The Ascendants lay in broken heaps, the perfect soldiers reduced to scrap. Voss turned his gaze to the sky. He knew what this meant. The Dominion had gambled everything on the Ascendants, and now they had nothing left. It was time to finish this war. The final assault on Dominion High Command came 3 weeks later. The rebellion, emboldened by the Titans' victories, launched a sector-wide offensive. Entire Dominion fleets defected. Military governors surrendered without firing a shot. The once mighty empire crumbled under the weight of its own fear. But there would be no surrender for High Command. Voss and his Titans led the charge, breaching the Dominion citadel on Terra Prime. The halls of power that had once controlled the fate of billions now ran red with blood. Voss reached the heart of the complex, where the last Dominion leaders cowered behind their remaining guards. "You left us to die," he said, stepping over the bodies of fallen officers. "Now you understand what that means." The Titans raised their weapons. The war ended with a single command: burn it all. The Dominion died screaming. High Command's last stronghold crumbled under fire, its walls torn apart by the very soldiers it had betrayed. Dominion generals, admirals, and politicians, once the architects of an empire, fell in minutes. Some begged, some fought. None survived. Voss stood in the ruins of the Dominion War Council chamber, blood splattered across his armor. The galaxy's most powerful rulers had spent their final moments cowering before the Titans they had created. It was over. Graves stepped beside him, exhaling. "We actually did it." Ren let out a low chuckle, wiping his blade clean. "Took their whole damn empire and turned it to ash." Voss turned, surveying what remained of his warriors. There weren't many. The Titans had never expected to live long enough to see victory. They had fought, bled, and burned for a cause they never asked for. But now, standing over the Dominion's courts, there was only one question left. What came next? The rebellion celebrated across the stars. The Dominion's chains had been broken. Colonies declared independence, fleets defected, and the old order collapsed under the weight of its own sins. But power never vanished, it only shifted. 2 weeks after the fall, Selene Rowe arrived on Terra Prime with a delegation of rebel leaders. The free colonies had already begun forming a new government, and they wanted the Titans to be a part of it. "People see you as legends," Selene said, standing across from Voss in the burnout war chamber. "You didn't just win, you changed everything. The Titans are symbols of resistance now." Voss leaned against a shattered command table, unreadable. "Symbols don't rule." Selene crossed her arms. "No, but they lead." The room fell silent. The rebellion wanted the Titans to become something more: protectors, enforcers, the unbreakable shield of this new order. But Voss had seen the cycle before. Power always corrupted. The Dominion had started with noble intentions once too. Graves spoke up first. "We didn't fight to become their version of peacekeepers." Ren grunted. "We're not politicians, and we're damn sure not diplomats." Selene didn't flinch. "Then what are you?" Voss stared at her, then looked out over the ruined skyline of Terra Prime. For the first time in his life, he didn't have an order to follow. No master's voice in his ear. No war waiting on the horizon. And that's when he realized the truth. "We're not part of this new world," he said quietly. "We never were." Selene's expression flickered, disappointment, maybe understanding. "Then what will you do?" Voss turned to his Titans, the last of the Forsaken warriors. They had no home, no cause left to fight for, but they were still something the galaxy had never seen before: unbound, unstoppable, untamed. He smirked. "Whatever the hell we want." The Forsaken Titans disappeared soon after. Some say they left for the edge of known space, building something new in the shadows. Others whisper that they became the galaxy's deadliest mercenaries, selling their war-forged skills to the highest bidder. But the one thing everyone agreed on: They weren't dead. They were waiting.